Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Farnsworth, and this is for Education 216. I am interviewing an amazing teacher, Miss Jaime Speed, who is a fifth grade teacher at Juniper Elementary School here in Bend. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, everybody.
So, Jamie, let's just jump right in. And how long have you been at Juniper?
So this is my 14th year at Juniper. It's my 18th year teaching.
Oh, that's amazing. Where were you before?
I was at Lapine Elementary, so just south of Bend. I was there for 4 years.
Great.
Yeah.
And what made you choose the fifth grade? Have you always been in the fifth grade or?
No, so I thought when I started, I would be like a K1. And then the master's program I was in made us student teach in 2 different levels to make sure that we knew where we were supposed to be. And so I did the bulk of my student teaching in a first and a second grade class. And then when I went to fifth grade, I realized, oh, no, I want them to know how to tie their shoes. And so I really liked fifth grade, not because of that, but because of the ability to have rich discussions and they get sarcasm. And those are my people. So I've spent the bulk of my career fourth and fifth grade. I've done 1, 3, 4 blend, but other than that, I've been at fourth or fifth grade.
Nice. So what initially drew you to teaching? Did you have any kind of aha moment where you were like, I want to be a teacher?
Yeah, and it didn't happen until college. So teaching was not my plan ever. I wasn't one of those kids that was like, I want to grow up and be a teacher. That was definitely not my plan. I was in my senior year in college. I was headed to a fine arts school in New York, and I triple majored in college, and I was taking a kind of capstone course for my history major, and it was on the history of racial intolerance in America, called Us versus Them. And a teacher brought over his 6th grade students from Irvington Elementary, which was a pretty tough elementary school right off of MLK Boulevard in downtown Northeast Portland. And he taught using a method called Storyline, which he brought over to Oregon from Scotland when he spent time educating in Scotland. And in Storyline, students get to pretend to be somebody that they're not. And his students had just completed a unit on the Underground Railroad. And they were so passionate in how they were presenting their learning. I mean, they were doing poetry and they were crying. And they were, they're cool, too cool for school, 6th graders. And so I was fascinated by it. And so I started volunteering in his classroom just to kind of find out more about this thing. And when I got over there, they were doing medieval times. So he had a huge kind of student-created castle in the middle of his classroom. The Black Plague had just hit, so some of them were like mourning the death of their family members. And it was the most amazing learning, writing, reading that I'd ever seen. And so I thought, I'm kind of getting tired of fine art stuff. I don't know if I want to move, and I'm really into this. So if I could teach like this might be something I want to do. So I just shoved in all my prereqs that last year, and I decided to give it a try. So,
nice. Yeah. So what is one lesson that you learned from college that really has stuck with you all these years that you might want to share with this education class?
Build relationships. I think that I had a really amazing college professor for one of my education classes, but also just in my years of experience is if you can't build relationships with them, they won't listen to you and they won't learn. And so I think the basis of all education is relationships.
Okay. You just mentioned a professor. Did you have a mentor or an educator that really inspired you on this quest to become a teacher?
Yeah, so I joined this master's program, and totally, like, everyone else had wanted to be teachers their whole lives. And I was like, great, I'm just trying to figure out if this is my bag or not. And I had a professor, her name's Dr. Davenport, and she taught in a lab school for a long time for a university, and is now, I don't know if she's still there, but an ELA professor for Eastern Oregon University. And she was the one that really focused on building relationships, having class meetings, but also using picture books as tools for all sorts of things, and was so passionate about it that you couldn't help but become passionate yourself. And so I relied on her quite a lot through that year and into finishing my master's and into my first year of teaching. So yeah, definitely.
Oh, great. Well, what has been throughout the years one of your favorite memories from teaching?
That's a hard one. I have a lot because the
Oh,
18
good.
years is a long time. I think some of my favorite memories are tied to I take my students on overnight field trips, and I teach at a low-income school. And so I get to take kids to the ocean that have never been to the ocean before. And it's pretty awesome to see this big, tough, like my size, 10-year-old leap around like a toddler in the water. It's so cool. And or to see them touch ocean life for the first time, or any kind of major new discoveries, I think are really moments that stick in your mind, and that they're the moments that they remember too. And so I think giving them opportunities, those are the moments that stick with me, or those opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Now, in our education class, we actually have, we started out learning or hearing from a lot of teachers that about all the hard times, the rough points. And we all understand that this is a very emotional, very tough profession. It's not a cakewalk. So I was wondering, if you can share, what is one of the hardest things that you've had to do or that has happened?
I think, yes, the system isn't what we'd like, and we can rally about politics all day. But I think when it comes down to what really affects me as a teacher are when kids are in situations that I can't help with. And so for me, that can be a neglect or abuse situation where we've done what we can and nothing's happening. Or another big one is when a student is on medication for ADHD or even an antipsychotic, and parents decide to see what'll happen if they just take him off. And so they're messing with his brain chemistry, and there isn't anything you can really do. And so that's where relationships are so important for me, because I feel like if nothing else, my job is to create a place where that person feels safe and loved for 8 hours a day. And then, yes, I teach reading, writing, and math and all of the other things too, but my main job is they need to come there and know that they're loved and they're safe. So I think the hardest things are when what's going on outside isn't safe, and they aren't safe, they aren't feeling loved, and there isn't a lot you can do about it. That's what keeps you up at night, I think, sometimes.
Now, let's kind of switch to more of like the present right now. Can you give me an example of how, in the many years that you've been teaching, how your teaching style has evolved, or how it may be a little different from when you started?
Well, when I started, I didn't really trust myself. I wanted to do it by the book. I took a class on classroom management. I tried to follow that. That did not work. And so I think relying on other teachers that are experienced, that you look at and you respect, I went to them and said, I'm trying the things I was told, it's not working. What am I supposed to do? And so I think you have to be comfortable with yourself, and trust yourself. And that takes time. It also depends from group to group. How my relationship with my group this year is different from my relationship with my group last year. And so ultimately, deep down, I'm the same person, but the model I may be using for classroom management or structure may be different because the needs of the students are different. But it's always based in relationship building. It always has been. And I think that's just me as a person, that's important to me, that I want to know the people I'm spending all of my day with, but I think that's really cemented over the years, is that it's less about getting going on content right from the beginning and leaving time to build those relationships and feeling okay with that, that it's okay to keep content off for a while.
Definitely you have to be very flexible.
Oh, golly.
Not just from year to year, but also probably throughout the year, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Because the tools you're using in September, they're tired. So, by the time they come back from winter break, you have to be able to shift. And there are some years where you've used every tool and it's, November. And so you're bugging teachers and on Pinterest, and you're trying all of the things because what you're used to doing isn't working. And so I think as a teacher, you have to be willing to self-assess, and then assess your group and pivot. And you have to be willing to do that a lot, so that you're setting everybody up for success.
So you have another job also. You have a second job educating educators, right?
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I am a coach. I'm a coach for the school district, but I'm also a coach for another company. And so I work with about 40 educators across the country. And we look at what their struggles are in their classroom for this particular year. And we set goals and come up with strategies. And we meet every 2 weeks and look at the data and evidence that they bring in regards to whatever strategy we discuss. And we brainstorm ways of making it better, or adding a new strategy, but just keeping that forward momentum. So I'm more of a sounding board and a little bit of an accountability partner, because so often in a lot of schools, you're an island in your room, unfortunately. And so I'm kind of this help coming in from the outside, that's not involved in the politics of your school or whatever. I'm just this totally impartial person from the outside, that will sit and listen and work and plan with you. So it's pretty awesome.
Now, is it as rewarding teaching adult educators as it is students?
It's different. So it's funny because I just got off a call right before we started this with a kindergarten teacher in Seattle. And she, this was her first year, and it's been hard, really hard for her. And as we were getting off the call, she started crying because she's so grateful at the growth that she's made this year. And so that's pretty powerful as an educator. But it's hard to compare that to a group of 30, fifth graders that are yelling because they're so excited about something that they just figured out. Like my kids this year are obsessed with grammar. So like when I say
that's
grammar,
okay.
they yell, "Yay, grammar!" It's like, what? And it's hard to compare. Ultimately, I'm in it for kids. But in educating teachers, I'm able to reach more kids than I could just in my own classroom. And so that's why I don't leave one for the other, because it's hard. I don't know how to pick, because I'm reaching kids now all over the country, whereas before I was just able to reach kids in my own classroom.
Now, you are a very hands-on teacher. I know that you were explaining, you have different styles and projects and everything that you bring into your classroom throughout the year. Now, you were recently on the cover.
I know, my gosh, so ridiculous.
On the cover of the Bend Bulletin for a pop-up restaurant that your kids put together. Could you tell me a little bit about the project and maybe another, I know that you do some other interesting hands-on activities.
I did not call the paper. I did not want the paper there because I was so stressed out because I'd never done a pop-up restaurant. So we have a new science curriculum this year, and it's called Amplify, and it's great. But it's not, at least at the 5th grade level, it wasn't super hands-on. As hands-on as I would like science to be. But we are told you need to use this curriculum, and be prepared, you will be told that a lot. And so I had to make the curriculum work within my philosophy. So I do storyline, which is where kids get to pretend to be something that they aren't, and live their lives accordingly. And so the whole premise of the science unit was about food chemistry. And so I thought, well, okay, so they're food chemists, like, what would that really look like? And so all I could think of was that molecular gastronomy.
Yeah,
like Iron Chef kind of stuff. So I kept thinking, okay, chemistry, cook food. Okay, we'll open a restaurant, sure. And so the whole time we're learning the chemistry of molecules and atoms and bonding and all of that, it's all through these kind of challenges put forward. So like the first challenge is, here's a color of the dye, and the company wants to know if there's any red dye in it because they don't want red dye in their food. So we had to find a way of separating the colors out in the dye, and then figure out how did that work. And then the next one was, they want a salad dressing that is oil and vinegar based, but they don't want it to separate. And they didn't want any anything to settle to the bottom. So we had to learn about emulsifiers and how that all worked. So I'm thinking a very small little, like, food serving to parents. They were thinking much bigger than So, and with Storyline, you kind of you follow them. So they decided, no, we're doing a full restaurant, and it's going to be Harry Potter themed. And so they came up with the name. We brainstormed the names, and then they voted and chose a name. I have a friend who's a graphic designer. So she came in and taught them the steps of the do's and don'ts of graphic design. So
wait just a second, because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. We have to say the name.
I know, the name is amazing.
It's amazing. It's Wingardium Leviosa, right?
Right, Leviosa. I could not believe it when she said it. I was like, what? I never would. Like, I was expecting, yes, we got Dumbledore's Diner and favorite, Harry Potter house. Like, we had all the typical names. And then there were two that stood out as super clever. And one of them was Serious Food, Sirius.
Yes.
Right, which is so great. And then Sasha's like, what about Wingardio Leviosa? And I was like, what? Because I thought she was just saying Wingardio Leviosa. And she's like, no, sauce, Sauce. And I'm like, what is this? And of course, it was like the immediate winner of the competition. So that's the name, is what was Wingardium Leviosa. And then my graphic designer friend came in and went over kind of the commandments of graphic design. And all the kids designed a logo. And then it was voted on and a logo was chosen. And they designed the menu. They designed the cards with all the food descriptions. And so we were able to bring technology into it. So I sent it home an RSVP, and I got back. People were like inviting like 9 or 10 people from there. I had over 100 people come. So we made a lot of food. I only had one parent helper that came the day of food prep. And my son actually took the day off of high school. He's a senior. And he came and helped for the day. But we made a lot of food, and And it was so fun. And then last minute, one of our educational assistants, I reached out to ask if I wanted to quickly hand make, like hot glue together some matching aprons. How much, we're talking like the day before, how much fabric would I get? Because she's a quilter. And she's like, well, I'll just make them. So she bought the fabric, brought her sewing machine to school, and sewed 30 little matching Harry Potter aprons.
Oh, how cute.
They had little aprons, and several of them wore them all week long. They wore them all week. So I love things like that, because that's something I know they'll remember. The unit we're on now is my favorite, which is the American Revolution. So they are colonists. They love life right now because they're not getting taxed yet. But I go down during lunchtime and I start taxing their lunches for sugar and plastic, because they were taxed for glass. I tax them for plastic. So you start seeing kids finding creative, unusual ways of bringing food to school. It cuts down on sugar consumption, which is nice. But they get to experience life as somebody else. And so I think that that's a really fun, engaging way for kids.
Now you are going to introduce the kid-friendly Hamilton soon,
Oh,
right?
yes. And they do. Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah. We have a big American Revolution program, and my students, they're the only class that learns the first song to the musical Alexander Hamilton, but I changed 3 words in it because they're not appropriate, and the kids are fine with it. And so it fits really well, and they become little, Lin-Manuels. So it's great.
Now, do you have any classroom rituals? I know that we see a lot of time on YouTube and Facebook, cute little high fives every morning and stuff like that. Do you have any rituals in your classroom that you like to carry over from year to year, or change them? Or
so for us, it's hard to have those morning rituals because we serve breakfast and our kids kind of trickle in over 15 or 20 minutes. So we don't really have any morning rituals. We, at the end of the day, we do a handshake, high five, hug, or fist pound on our way out. And they just tell me what they want as they're leaving. And we do a lot of family meetings, and that's what we call them. Class meetings, whatever you want to call them, but we call them family meetings. And we talk about, it may be a problem we're having as a community. It may be last year and this year, so weird, 2 years in a row, a parent died last year, and then a parent is dying this year, a different parent. And so helping support that student. Or it may be we just are really excited about break and we want to share what's happened at break. And so we do a lot of class meetings. The other thing that is a huge part of my room is nobody's too cool to do anything, not anybody. We call it Don't Be That Guy.
Which is great at that age.
Yeah, because they are too cool. Like, because we dance a lot, we sing a lot, we do dorky things. And so, and we dance a lot. And so nobody's too cool. Don't be that guy. And you'll hear them say, like, quit being that guy. And so music is a huge part of my classroom, for sure.
So kind of jumping off of that and off of the Hamilton, you and I met through local community theater.
Yeah.
And how does being a performer benefit you in the classroom?
Because you can fake everything. And that's what's great. So I'm not nervous. I get nervous in front of adults, but give me a group of kids any day, I'm not nervous. I can make anything seem exciting. And yay, fractions, and they believe you. Now, I think if I were a high school teacher, that it might be a little bit trickier. But I think there are days when you're tired. There are days when you just got out of a meeting looking at data where you feel you got punched in the stomach. Or you just dealt with a grumpy parent, or you just don't feel well and you just don't want to be there. So I think performance helps you rise above it and put on that teacher face, and you can get through your day. Or if something like active shooter drills are a great example of a time where in your own head you get freaked out, and there isn't a teacher alive that's going to say, they don't sit and think, what would I do during an active shooter drill? But the whole time I'm like, we're just, this is just pretend. We've not, and you've just got to make it not scary. And so I think performance has been hugely helpful in me being willing to be silly and not be that guy, because I do silly stuff. If they're dancing, I'm dancing. So not much embarrasses me. And I can help through challenging times, because if I lose it, like, I'm where they look to say, like, am I safe? Is everything okay? It's like looking at their parents when Santa's in the room, for photos. It's like, should I be scared of Santa? Like, how do I feel about Santa? And their parent is telling them, like, how to feel about Santa. I feel like that's my role, is they're looking at me saying, should I be afraid? Am I safe to do this? And so I need to have that face on all the time.
Do you think that do you think it's beneficial for any student, any teacher, to bring a hobby or not necessarily that's tied to what they're teaching into the classroom?
Oh, absolutely. If you can bring anything you're passionate about into your classroom, I think you will catch a kid that maybe would have slipped through the cracks. I'm going to let my dog in really fast. Just one example is we have an educational assistant that at recess time taught kids to crochet just for fun.
Yeah.
And we had a student who was going through some really hardcore traumatic things and was heading into the foster system. And that was his outlet. He would crochet. And had she not brought that as an option, he wouldn't have learned how to do it. And it just brought this peace to him that he was making everybody scarves. And so I think, and it also shows you're a human. Because one thing I do want to clarify when I say, like, my teacher face, if I'm sad, they know I'm sad. If I'm upset at them, they know I'm upset. They need to know we're human. And so I think when you're having a genuine emotion, you need to share that so that they know that teachers are humans and that we don't live at school. And so I think bringing hobbies from outside shows a passion and another side to you. They love seeing pictures of, like, your pets or you on vacation. I do a lot of flipped learning, so I'll record myself teaching at my house, and then have some kids working with me on their iPads that way while I'm working it live with another group. And like, if my cat makes an appearance, you'll hear it. Just like, there's our cat. Like, they get so excited just seeing my cat walk across the room. And so they want to know us. And so the only way they can do that is if we show them parts of ourselves, and hobbies and things are a great way to do that.
Do you think, with how society is going right now, do you think that you will remain an educator, that it's something that you find sustainable? Obviously, you've been in it this long. Do you think it's something that you will retire from, and or do you occasionally feel the teacher burnout and just want to be like, that's it?
Yeah, so it's funny you should say that, because I do feel a little like I'm going through my teacher midlife crisis. I'm in the middle of my career, and it is hard to not, and I choose to work with a high needs population. That is my choice. That's what is my passion. But in choosing to work with a high needs population, that takes a toll on you emotionally. And it also you're advocating for them all the time, which can become tiresome. Not because you're tired of them, but just because you're tired of losing all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think yeah, it's funny. I feel like I'm a little bit at a crossroads. I don't want to leave, but I don't know, with the amount of work, I don't know. Things might be shifting though, and I feel like there is hope on the horizon, that's coming, with this, wear red for ed and all of the strikes that are happening all over, and Oregon in particular looking at funding differently. Um, I have hope, but it is a tiresome thing, and it is. I don't want to be a downer, but we are the nation's punching bag. And so it can, yes, we get awards sometimes, yay, and we're on the paper, but when you see, I don't know if you remember earlier this year, there was an article in Time that said teachers had to take second jobs. It was on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
Time, Newsweek maybe. And I made the mistake of going on Twitter and read comments
never do that.
Oh,
never do that.
No.
Don't be the trolls, Jamie.
I know. And it was so disheartening to think that that's, and it's hard not to take it personally, but that's like, you're not talking about any teacher I know. It's hard to be that, and to know, it may not get better. And so I think the best thing you can do for burnout is to find solace in each other. That's been, and in something else that's not school. That's why theater has been important for me, is to have friends outside of school, but also to have a very strong network of friends inside of school, so that when you're nearing burnout, you have people that you can rely on.
So I just read that, I think we're all aware of this, but Oregon is 33rd in the nation for educational statistics and whatnot. Like, what do you think is Oregon's problem? Like, what do you feel is the downfall?
So it's
obviously not teachers, because we have amazing educators.
So it's been interesting. So I've in having the second job of working with teachers all over the country. What I can tell you is it's hard everywhere. But what I can also tell you is that not every state has classes sizes that are 37. Most schools have counselors. Elementary schools have counselors. So I think the way that Oregon used its funding cuts was to raise class sizes, to cut instructional aides, and to cut our counselors. So you took away all mental health support K-5. We have none. We have zero mental health support K-5. I've had a class up to 37, which is then you don't get to know them because you're just managing behaviors. We've had kindergartens that were 25, 26. Right? Can you imagine?
No.
Right. I mean, our kindergarten right now is at like 25, 26. And so I think that is an issue, those two things. I also think taking kindergarten and turning it from, and this isn't singular to Oregon, but Oregon jumped really hard on this bandwagon, was they need to leave kindergarten reading. And they took away the really important work of how to do school and how to have friendships and how to have compromise and how to play. And so what ends up happening is small issues that could have been handled when they are 5 grow because they now have social issues that continue through
performance anxiety
and it follows, and there's no mental health support. And so I don't have time to sit with this kid one-on-one when I've got 36 other kids in my room, and it just gets bigger and gets bigger and gets bigger. So by the time it hits 5th grade, it's really a big problem. And so I think those are our major issues, is class size, not having mental health support for kiddos K-5. And honestly, counselors at middle and high school are there for scheduling. They're not really there for mental health support either. So really mental health K-12, class sizes K-12, and kindergarten needs to be about learning how to do school. So I think those are our big major issues. I don't know where the funding's going. I really, really don't. I don't know. I mean, we have ceiling tiles that have mold growing. I don't know where our funding is, but it's I think it's yeah.
It's not in the classrooms.
It's not in the classrooms, unfortunately. And I do think
so on that note, positive note, I would like to leave on a positive note. What would you like to impart onto this education class that I am taking right now, which is a lot of, probably a third of them aren't even going into the education, but you never know, like this class could spark something in them. So what is something that you'd really like to leave this interview with?
It's worth it. And so I think, see, I could get all teary thinking about it. I'm gonna cry.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't make me cry.
I think everybody needs to chill out on teachers. So even if you're not going into education, it's so much harder than you think it is. I think a lot of people think, oh, I went to school, so I know what it's like. It's not like how it was when we went to school and we were students. So we don't know what it was like for teachers and administrators. So just because you've gone to school doesn't mean you're an expert on school. Be nice to teachers. Number two, I think, is if you're going into education, go in knowing it's going to be hard. Find a mentor as soon as you can. And you're assigned a mentor, but my mentor was not my assigned mentor. My mentor was my next door neighbor. And she's still one of my very best friends, and she's a principal now. And there is not a job that is more, K-5 in particular. I can only speak, middle and high school, they show their love and affection in different ways. But there is not as affirming a job on a day-to-day basis as a teacher, because you get told every day by little people how much you mean to them. And you get love notes, you get cards, you get hilarious drawings of yourself. You get important cards from parents saying what a difference you made. I have a student he's a man now, that she said I saved his life. And so, yeah. And with social media, they find you, which is so cool. You get to see how they grew up. And not to be a musical dork, but I think Hamilton, there's a line in Hamilton that says, what is legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden that you'll never see grow. I think that's education, but I think with social media, you're able to see them grow now. They find you, and you find out they're becoming teachers, or they're becoming these amazing people that you got to be a part of. And so you'll get tired. You will be not treated as as well as you should sometimes. But know that the impact you have is so great that it can't really be measured. And it's more than a stupid test score, please. Like, just let them, love them, and they will love you. And I don't know of a more rewarding job.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, class. All right.